Evelyn Harper lifted her champagne glass and smiled at the crowded dining room. "Let's all be grateful Lucas had the ambition to succeed," she said loudly, "because if he'd married a woman with goals instead of just a housewife, maybe he'd be a CEO by now." Laughter rippled softly around the table. Mae Snyder felt her chest tighten as every eye turned toward her, and across from her, Lucas, her husband of 12 years, actually smirked. Not defended her. Not corrected his mother. Smirked. Then Mae slowly stood up, adjusted the sleeve of her black dress, and said calmly, "Well, that's interesting, Evelyn. Especially considering I officially became your landlord this morning." The wineglass slipped from Evelyn's hand and shattered across the marble floor. If you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or treated like your kindness made you weak, stay with this story until the end. Because sometimes the quietest woman in the room is the one holding the power nobody saw coming. 12 years earlier, Mae Snyder used to walk through Boston like she belonged to herself. She had opinions back then, sharp ones. She wore fitted blazers, carried leather portfolios, and spent long afternoons sketching luxury interior concepts in noisy cafes while jazz played softly overhead. At 28, Mae was already building a reputation as a rising interior designer with boutique clients across Massachusetts. Then she met Lucas Snyder. Back then, Lucas had a smile that made women feel chosen. He noticed details. He remembered her coffee order. He listened when she talked about color theory and architecture and the dream she had of someday opening her own design firm. "You make spaces feel alive," he told her once during their third date. That's rare. And for a while, Mae believed she had found a man who truly saw her. Lucas was ambitious, polished, and magnetic in the effortless way wealthy men often were. He worked in corporate consulting, then climbing quickly through a prestigious Chicago-based firm. When he received a major promotion opportunity 2 years into their relationship, it required relocating. "I don't want to do this without you," he told her. Mae still remembered the snow falling outside that restaurant window when he reached for her hand. "We'll build something together." Together. That word ruined her life for a long time, because little by little together became sacrifice, and sacrifice slowly became disappearance. After they married, Mae left Boston and moved to Chicago with Lucas. She told herself it was temporary. Her design career could pause for a year or two while Lucas established himself. But corporate America had a way of swallowing entire marriages whole. Lucas worked longer hours. Then came the networking dinners. Then the business trips. Then the pressure. Mae adapted because that's what loving women do. She learned wine pairings for executive dinners, memorized the names of Lucas's clients' spouses, hosted elegant parties in homes she decorated herself while wealthy strangers complimented Lucas on his perfect life. Nobody ever asked who created it. By year 3, Mae was managing everything in the house, the schedules, the holidays, the social obligations, Lucas's dry cleaning, Lucas's meals, Lucas's exhausted moods, Lucas's image. And somewhere in the middle of all that, she quietly stopped managing herself. The first time Evelyn Harper insulted her openly was during Thanksgiving. Mae had spent 2 days preparing dinner from scratch in their suburban Chicago home. The table looked beautiful. Candles flickered softly against crystal glasses while snow fell outside the massive dining room windows. Evelyn took one bite of the sweet potatoes and sighed dramatically. "Well," she said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin, "at least you had enough free time to cook all day." Everyone laughed politely. Mae smiled because she didn't know what else to do. Lucas squeezed her knee beneath the table later that night. She didn't mean anything by it. But she always meant something by it. Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering. Evelyn criticized Mae's clothes, Mae's cooking, Mae's weight, her lack of children, her dependency on Lucas, her absence from the corporate world. "You're too pretty to waste your life playing maid," Evelyn once said, while sipping champagne at a charity event. Mae remembered forcing herself to laugh, because women like Evelyn punished emotional reactions. If Mae defended herself, she was dramatic. If she stayed quiet, she was weak, and Lucas always chose the easiest path, silence. At first, Mae thought he was trying to keep peace between the two most important women in his life. Years later, she realized something much uglier. His mother's cruelty benefited him. An insecure wife was easier to control. By year 7, Mae barely recognized herself. She no longer dressed for confidence. She dressed for approval. She no longer spoke with certainty. She softened every sentence. Maybe. I'm probably overthinking. It's okay. Her entire personality became an apology. Meanwhile, Lucas thrived. He rose through corporate leadership, quickly becoming the polished golden man everyone admired. Executives loved him. Clients trusted him. Women flirted with him openly at events. and Mae stood beside him smiling like a decorative extension of his success. One winter evening, she overheard something she was never supposed to hear. Lucas stood in his office speaking to a colleague over speakerphone while Mae carried folded laundry down the hallway. "I don't know how you do it," the man joked. "My wife would kill me if she stayed home all day." Lucas laughed softly. "Mae's different." There was a pause. Then Lucas added casually, "She likes taking care of things. Honestly, it makes my life easier, not happier, not meaningful, easier." Mae stood frozen outside the door, holding his shirts against her chest. That single sentence hollowed something out inside her, because suddenly she saw herself the way he did. Not as a partner, a convenience. That night, Mae sat alone in the dark kitchen long after Lucas went to sleep. Snow pressed softly against the windows while the refrigerator hummed in the silence. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to think a terrifying thought. What if nobody was ever coming to save her? Not Lucas. Not love. Not time. Maybe this was her life now. A beautiful prison with marble countertops. Tears slid silently down her face, but beneath the grief something else stirred quietly. Anger, not explosive anger, not cinematic rage. Something colder, something awake. The next morning, Mae did something small that would eventually change everything. She opened a private bank account Lucas didn't know existed. It started innocently enough. A little money from grocery budgets, small savings from household accounts, careful transfers, tiny amounts no one would notice. But it wasn't really about the money. It was about proving to herself that she still existed outside him. Weeks later, she started staying up after Lucas fell asleep. Instead of watching television, Mae watched online lectures, real estate investing, financial literacy, property management, negotiation strategy. At first, she felt ridiculous. A 40-year-old housewife, secretly studying investment law at 2 a.m. while her husband snored upstairs. But the more she learned, the more something returned to her. Confidence. Marcus Bennett's investment podcasts became her nightly ritual. Rachel Monroe's legal seminars played softly through headphones while the rest of the house slept. For the first time in years, Mae's mind belonged to her again, and slowly, quietly, dangerously. Mae Snyder stopped shrinking. Then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, while organizing tax documents in Lucas's office, she noticed something strange. Several recurring transfers, large ones, not business accounts, private. Mae frowned and opened another file, then another, and another. Her stomach tightened. Luxury hotel charges, jewelry purchases, private dining expenses. Thousands of dollars. None of them connected to her. The final document made her blood run cold. A payment authorization tied to a luxury apartment building on Lakeshore Drive. And beneath it, a woman's name she had never seen before. Vanessa Cole. Mae stared at the page while thunder rolled outside the windows. For 12 years she had been invisible inside her own marriage. But for the first time, she was finally starting to see everything. The thing about emotionally neglected women was that most people never noticed their suffering. Not when the house looked beautiful, not when the husband succeeded, not when the wine was chilled perfectly at dinner parties and the Christmas table looked like something from a luxury magazine spread. People only noticed chaos. Mae Snyder had spent 12 years making sure nobody ever saw any. By 6:30 every morning, she was already awake. The coffee machine hummed softly through the marble kitchen while Chicago's gray winter sky stretched across the enormous windows of their suburban home. Lucas liked his coffee black with cinnamon. 1 packet of raw sugar. Mug warmed first. Mae remembered everything. That was the problem. She remembered his meetings, his allergies, his mother's medications, his favorite ties before presentations, the exact tone of voice he used when he was stressed but pretending he wasn't. Meanwhile, Lucas had forgotten the sound of her loneliness years ago. Morning, he muttered one Tuesday walking into the kitchen while scrolling through emails on his phone. Mae slid breakfast onto the counter. "You have dinner with the Hartford clients tonight," she reminded him gently, "and your mother's cardiology appointment is at 3. Lucas barely looked up. "Can you handle that?" Of course she could handle it. Mae handled everything. That afternoon, she drove Evelyn Harper to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, while Evelyn criticized traffic weather and the decline of standards in younger women all within 20 minutes. When Mae helped her out of the car carefully, Evelyn sighed dramatically. "You know," she said, adjusting her designer scarf, "I still don't understand why you never had children." Mae stiffened slightly. The topic was cruel territory. Years ago, Mae had desperately wanted children, But Lucas kept postponing it after the next promotion, after the next move, after the next bonus cycle. Then, eventually, they stopped talking about it entirely. Evelyn continued walking slowly toward the hospital entrance. A woman without ambition usually at least becomes a mother, she added casually. Otherwise, what exactly is she contributing? Mae felt the familiar sting spread through her chest. But she smiled politely anyway, because women like Evelyn thrived on emotional reactions. Inside the cardiology office, nurses greeted Mae warmly. "Oh, good you're here," one nurse said with relief. "Mrs. Harper only listens to you." Mae smiled faintly while helping Evelyn settle into the chair. That was the irony of people like Evelyn. They depended most heavily on the people they respected least. Later that evening, Mae returned home exhausted, only to find Lucas irritated because his blue tie wasn't pressed. "I needed that one tonight." Mae blinked tiredly. "I'm sorry. I thought the charcoal one matched your suit better." Lucas exhaled sharply. "You always do this." The words hit harder than they should have. Always do what care too much. Try too hard. Mae silently retrieved the tie while Lucas continued typing emails one-handed. No thank you, no concern, no noticing the exhaustion in her eyes. At the dinner party that night, Mae moved gracefully through the room, refilling wine glasses and guiding conversations, while Lucas charmed executives near the fireplace. "You two make marriage look effortless," one client's wife said admiringly. Mae almost laughed. Effortless. As if marriages collapsed naturally without someone constantly bleeding to keep them alive. Across the room, Lucas rested his hand briefly on a blonde woman's lower back while introducing her to another executive. Mae froze. The woman was stunning in the calculated way. Expensive women often were sleek dark blonde hair, sharp white dress, effortless confidence, predator-level eye contact. Vanessa Cole. Mae had heard Lucas mention her before, just someone from strategy. But the way Vanessa looked at him didn't feel professional. It felt familiar. Mae watched Lucas lean closer while Vanessa laughed softly at something he whispered. A strange heaviness settled in Mae's stomach. Not because she was shocked, because deep down, she had already known. Women always know when love changes temperature. Later that night, after guests left, Mae stood in the kitchen rinsing crystal glasses while Lucas loosened his tie. "The dinner went well?" he said distractedly. Mae kept her eyes on the sink. "Vanessa seems nice." Lucas paused briefly. "She's smart." Something about the answer made Mae's chest tighten. Not beautiful, not kind. Smart. The kind of compliment ambitious men reserved for women they admired. Mae dried her hands slowly. "Do you admire her?" Lucas gave a small laugh. "You're overthinking again." Again? Everything became overthinking once women started noticing disrespect. Mae turned toward him carefully. "I'm asking a simple question." Lucas's expression shifted slightly, irritation flashing beneath the polished surface. "She challenges me intellectually. Okay, we work together constantly. Don't turn this into something dramatic." There it was. The word. Dramatic? The fastest way to silence a hurting woman? Mae nodded quietly. "Right." Lucas sighed as if exhausted by her emotions rather than responsible for them. "I just need peace when I come home, Mae. Peace. Not partnership, not intimacy, not love. Comfort, convenience, silence." That night, Mae lay awake beside him staring into darkness while Lucas slept peacefully inches away. She studied the ceiling and tried remembering the last time she truly felt loved instead of managed. Nothing came. The next few weeks blurred together. Evelyn's constant criticism intensified. At Sunday brunch, she commented loudly on Mae's appearance. "You used to put more effort into yourself." Another night she laughed with friends in the living room while Mae carried dessert plates inside. Lucas always needed a woman with more fire, Evelyn said. But Mae is dependable. Dependable. Like furniture. Mae smiled mechanically while placing plates on the table. Something inside her was going numb, and maybe that was the beginning of her survival. One rainy Thursday evening, Mae passed Lucas's home office carrying folded laundry when she heard him speaking on speakerphone. She wasn't trying to listen. But then she heard her own name. "She's a good person," Lucas said. Mae stopped walking. The male voice on the phone laughed softly. "Good person or not, man, you sound miserable." Lucas was quiet for a moment, then he answered. "Miserable is a strong word." Mae's fingers tightened around the shirts in her arms, but the voice pressed. Lucas exhaled. "I don't know. Mae's safe. Comfortable. My life works because of her. Works because of her. Not loves because of her, not cherishes because of her. Works. The other man laughed again. Sounds like you married a personal assistant. Lucas chuckled softly. Sometimes it feels that way. Mae felt something cold spread through her body. Not heartbreak anymore. Humiliation. She backed away from the office silently before Lucas could see her. Inside their bedroom, she placed the folded shirts carefully on the bed and sat down slowly beside them. 12 years. 12 years of loving someone who described her like household infrastructure. Mae looked around the luxurious bedroom, designer furniture, soft lighting, framed wedding photos, expensive silence. Everything looked perfect. And suddenly she understood something devastating. Perfect-looking lives often hid the loneliest women. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time she refused to let them fall immediately, because grief was slowly turning into clarity. Later that night, Lucas showered downstairs while his phone buzzed beside the bed. Mae stared at it for several seconds. Then the screen lit up again. Vanessa. A preview message appeared. Last night was worth the risk. Mae stopped breathing. For a second, the entire room became soundless. No heartbreak, no screaming, no dramatic collapse. Just stillness. The kind that happens right before a woman changes forever. Mae did not confront Lucas immediately. That surprised even her. 12 years earlier, she would have exploded emotionally. She would have cried, demanded answers, begged for honesty. But something about seeing Vanessa's message had changed the texture of her pain. It no longer felt sharp. It felt old. Like finally discovering the source of a wound that had been bleeding quietly for years. The next morning, Lucas stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie while Mae watched him through the reflection. He looked exactly the same: expensive charcoal suit, clean-shaved, confident posture, wedding ring, still resting comfortably on his finger. That was the terrifying thing about betrayal. Sometimes it walked around looking completely normal. "You're quiet today," Lucas said casually. Mae folded a sweater slowly. "Did you sleep with Vanessa?" The room went still. Lucas turned toward her so quickly she almost laughed. Not because he looked guilty, because he looked annoyed. Jesus, Mae. There it was. Not shock, not denial. Exhaustion. The reaction of a man inconvenienced by consequences. Mae's voice remained calm. "I saw the message." Lucas stared at her for several seconds before running a frustrated hand through his hair. "You went through my phone?" Mae blinked once. That answer told her everything. "I saw the notification." Lucas scoffed quietly. "You're being paranoid." Mae almost smiled. Women could find evidence tattooed across a man's forehead and still somehow become the problem. She said last night was worth the risk. Lucas grabbed his watch aggressively from the counter. "You're twisting things." "What things exactly?" He exhaled sharply. "Vanessa and I work together constantly. Sometimes we have drinks after meetings. That's it." Mae studied his face carefully. 12 years beside someone taught you micro-expressions, the slight jaw, tension avoidance of eye contact, over-explaining defensive anger. Lucas was lying. And the worst part, he expected her to help him do it. "You know what your problem is?" Lucas muttered. Mae looked at him steadily. "You've become deeply insecure." The cruelty of the statement landed slowly, because Lucas knew exactly who created that insecurity. Years of emotional neglect, years of comparison, years of silence while his mother dismantled her confidence piece by piece, and now he wanted to weaponize the damage against her. Mae crossed her arms tightly. "Do you love her?" Lucas laughed without humor. "Unbelievable." "That wasn't my question." He grabbed his briefcase. "I can't do this before work." Before work. As if her humiliation needed better scheduling. Lucas moved toward the bedroom door, but Mae spoke again. "You never defend me." He stopped. The silence stretched between them heavily. Against whom Mae stared at him in disbelief. "Your mother?" Lucas rubbed his temple impatiently. "Mae, for God's sake." "No." Her voice cracked slightly for the first time. "I need you to answer honestly." Lucas turned fully toward her now, irritation hardening his expression. "She's difficult with everyone, but cruel specifically to me. She's old-fashioned. She humiliates me." Lucas sighed dramatically. "And you always take everything personally?" Mae felt tears sting her eyes. Not because of Evelyn anymore, because after 12 years, Lucas still refused to see her pain as real. "You know what hurts most," Mae whispered. "It's not even your mother anymore." Lucas's expression darkened. I'm tired of being blamed for your sensitivity. Sensitivity. Such a convenient word men used when they benefited from women enduring unacceptable behavior quietly. Mae laughed softly then, a broken sound. You let her destroy my confidence? That's ridiculous. You watched her do it. Lucas stepped closer, lowering his voice. You want honesty? Fine. Mae held her breath. Lucas looked at her with a frustration that suddenly felt terrifyingly honest. Keeping peace mattered more. The words hit like physical impact. Mae stared at him silently, and suddenly every memory rearranged itself. Every family dinner, every insult, every moment he looked away while she sat there shrinking in front of his mother. Not weakness, choice. Lucas chose comfort over protecting her, every single time. I spent 12 years loving you, Mae whispered. Lucas's face softened briefly, but not enough. You still do. The certainty in his voice made something inside her collapse, because he truly believed she would never leave, never stop forgiving, never stop absorbing pain quietly. Mae stepped backward slowly. I need some air. Lucas checked his watch. I have a meeting. Of course he did. He always had somewhere more important to be than inside difficult emotions. After Lucas left, Mae sat alone in the kitchen, staring blankly at untouched coffee. Her body felt numb. Not dramatic, not hysterical, just exhausted. Around noon, Evelyn arrived unexpectedly without calling first. Mae almost laughed at the timing. Evelyn walked into the house carrying shopping bags and criticism in equal measure. You look terrible, she announced immediately. Are you sick? Mae said nothing. Evelyn narrowed her eyes. What happened? For one brief, dangerous second, Mae considered telling her everything. The affair, the humiliation, the loneliness. But then she remembered something important. Women like Evelyn didn't comfort pain. They studied it. I asked Lucas if he's having an affair, Mae said quietly. Evelyn froze only momentarily before recovering. Interesting. Too quickly. Then she laughed softly. Oh, sweetheart. Mae's stomach twisted. You knew. Evelyn placed her purse down carefully. I know men. The calmness of her response made Mae feel physically ill. You knew, Mae repeated. Evelyn shrugged lightly. Lucas is successful, attractive. Powerful men attract attention? Mae stared at her. He's my husband, and you stopped being enough stimulation years ago. The words sliced straight through her chest. Evelyn sat elegantly at the kitchen island like she was discussing weather. You made yourself too available, she continued. Too accommodating. Men value challenge. Mae felt rage flicker beneath her skin. Not loud rage, the dangerous kind. You encouraged this. Evelyn looked genuinely confused. I encouraged Lucas to become successful. If that intimidated you, that's unfortunate. Mae laughed softly in disbelief. I gave up my career for him. Nobody forced you. Mae stared at the older woman sitting inside the kitchen Mae had designed, cleaned, decorated, and maintained for over a decade. Suddenly she saw Evelyn clearly, not powerful, empty, a woman who built self-worth through control because vulnerability terrified her, and Lucas had inherited that emotional cowardice perfectly. That evening, Mae opened Lucas's office after hours while rain hammered against the windows outside. For years, she had avoided touching his work things out of respect. Now respect felt meaningless. She carefully searched drawers and financial folders while her heartbeat thundered heavily in her chest. Then she found it. Private account statements, hotel charges, luxury purchases, jewelry receipts, thousands of dollars, spent while Lucas complained about financial pressure whenever Mae wanted anything for herself. Mae continued flipping through documents mechanically until another file caught her attention. Property paperwork, Lakeshore Drive residences. Her eyes narrowed. The address looked familiar, then she realized why. Evelyn's luxury apartment? Mae opened the file slowly. Payment authorizations, maintenance fees, quiet transfers from Lucas's private accounts. Her chest tightened further. Lucas had secretly been funding his mother's upscale lifestyle while repeatedly telling Mae they needed to be responsible financially, but the final page destroyed what little remained of her trust. A signed authorization connected to the property included another name beneath Lucas's. Vanessa Cole. Mae stared at it in stunned silence. Not only was Vanessa involved, she was connected to the building itself. Outside, Thunder shook the house violently while Mae sat frozen behind Lucas's desk. Then slowly, very slowly, Mae reached for her phone, and for the first time in 12 years she didn't call her husband. She searched top divorce attorneys in Chicago. Mae barely slept after searching for divorce attorneys. Not because she was uncertain, because certainty was terrifying. At 3 a.m, she sat alone in the dark kitchen wrapped in a cashmere blanket, while Chicago rain streaked the massive windows. The house was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional vibration of Lucas's phone upstairs. Her husband slept peacefully. That part almost made her laugh. Men like Lucas always slept well while women like Mae slowly unraveled beside them. She stared at the legal website glowing softly on her laptop screen. Rachel Monroe, senior partner, Monroe and Vale Family Law. The reviews described Rachel the same way: repeatedly ruthless, strategic, impossible to manipulate, terrifying in court. Mae clicked schedule consultation. For several seconds her hand hovered over the keyboard. Then she typed, "My husband is hiding assets and having an affair." The words looked unreal sitting there in black and white. Mae pressed send before fear could stop her. The next morning Lucas acted completely normal. That somehow hurt more than cruelty. He kissed her cheek absent-mindedly while scrolling through emails. "You okay? You seem tired." Mae looked at him carefully. 12 years together, and he still expected her to perform emotional comfort while he betrayed her. "I'm fine," she said softly. Lucas nodded without really listening. "Mom wants us at dinner Sunday." Of course she did. Evelyn always summoned family gatherings after tension, almost like she enjoyed watching Mae force smiles over fresh wounds. Lucas grabbed his coat. "Oh, and Vanessa's joining the Hartford expansion team officially." Mae's stomach tightened. He said her name too casually, too comfortably. "That's nice," Mae replied. Lucas paused briefly, almost suspicious of her calmness. Then he left. The moment the front door closed, Mae exhaled shakily. For years she believed surviving marriage meant enduring pain quietly. Now she was beginning to understand something different. Silence only protected the people hurting her. By noon, Mae sat inside Rachel Monroe's downtown Chicago office overlooking the river. The space felt sharp glass walls, dark wood-controlled elegance. Rachel herself looked exactly like someone who dismantled wealthy men professionally. Mid-40s, impeccably dressed, eyes too intelligent to miss anything. She reviewed Mae's documents silently for several minutes. Finally, Rachel leaned back in her chair. "How long have you known about the affair?" Mae asked quietly. Rachel nodded. 3 days. And the financial concealment Mae swallowed. "Last night." Rachel closed the file carefully. "Mae, I'm going to say something important, and I need you to hear it emotionally, not just intellectually." Mae straightened slightly. "Okay, your husband assumes you're weak." The bluntness stung. Rachel continued calmly. "That assumption is your biggest advantage." Mae stared at her. Rachel tapped the property paperwork. "Lucas is moving money privately through property-connected accounts. That becomes very relevant during divorce proceedings." Mae looked down at the documents again. "I don't even understand half of this." "You will." Something about Rachel's confidence steadied her. For the first time since discovering the affair, Mae felt something unfamiliar. Not grief. Direction. Rachel folded her hands. "Do you know why emotionally manipulative people target accommodating partners?" Mae shook her head. "Because accommodating people self-abandon before conflict ever begins." The sentence landed hard. Rachel's expression softened slightly. "You've spent years making everyone else comfortable. I'd like you to start becoming strategic instead." Strategic? Mae had never thought of herself that way. Before leaving, Rachel handed her a business card. "Do not confront Lucas again emotionally." Mae frowned. "What do you mean?" Rachel's tone sharpened. "No more crying conversations, no begging for honesty, no warning him." Mae stared quietly. "He already knows what he did." That sentence followed Mae all the way home. He already knows. When she pulled into the driveway, she sat inside the car for several extra minutes, staring at the enormous suburban house. For years, she thought this home represented success. Now it looked like evidence of her disappearance. Later that evening, Mae opened an old storage box in the back of her closet while Lucas attended a corporate dinner. Inside were pieces of her former life design sketches, client portfolios, photographs, handwritten goals, and beneath everything else, a letter from her late Aunt Diane. Mae's chest tightened instantly. Diane Walker had been the only woman in Mae's family who truly frightened men. Sharp-minded, independent, self-made in commercial real estate. She never married, never apologized for ambition, and constantly warned Mae about sacrificing too much for love. You can love deeply without making yourself small, Diane used to say. Mae hadn't understood then. Now she finally did. Inside the box sat another envelope Mae had almost forgotten existed. Inheritance documents. After Diane died 3 years earlier, Mae inherited investment funds and partial business assets. At the time, Lucas barely showed interest beyond basic condolences. "You should let financial advisors manage it," he told her back then dismissively. So Mae quietly did something Lucas never noticed. She learned, night after night, course after course, lecture after lecture, not because she planned revenge, because some hidden part of her already knew she might someday need saving, and nobody was coming. The next afternoon, Rachel connected Mae with a real estate investor named Marcus Bennett. Mae expected someone cold and arrogant. Instead, Marcus looked like a retired professor, silver hair, calm eyes, expensive coat worn carelessly. They met at a private cafe overlooking Lake Michigan. Marcus reviewed the Lakeshore Drive property file carefully. "This building is undervalued," he said eventually. Mae blinked. "What?" Marcus slid the paperwork toward her. "The owner's retiring. Quiet sale. Prime location. Strong long-term potential." Mae frowned. "I thought Lucas and Vanessa were buying units there." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. "They may be investing through the property, but the building itself." He tapped the folder. "That's an entirely different level." Mae stared at the documents. A strange thought formed slowly. Marcus watched her expression carefully. "You're thinking about it." Mae laughed nervously. "That's insane. Is it I'm a housewife?" Marcus smiled faintly. "No, Mae. You're a woman who's been underestimated for a very long time." The sentence sent chills through her. Marcus leaned back calmly. "Do you know what the wealthiest people understand better than everyone else?" Mae shook her head. "Ownership." The word lingered heavily between them. Ownership, not dependency. Not permission, power. Marcus continued reviewing numbers. "With your inheritance assets and the right financing structure, you could absolutely make an offer." Mae stared at him like he'd spoken another language. Her buying a luxury apartment building. It sounded absurd. Then suddenly, it didn't. For years, Lucas and Evelyn treated her like someone incapable of surviving without them. Maybe the cruelest thing wasn't that they believed it. Maybe it was that Mae eventually believed it too. Marcus interrupted her thoughts gently. "What scares you more?" Failing Mae looked out toward the gray lake. "No." "What then?" Mae answered honestly. "Realizing I never needed them as much as they wanted me to think I did." Marcus smiled slowly. That, he said quietly, is usually the first moment a person becomes dangerous. 3 days later, Mae sat alone inside a private conference room downtown, documents spread across polished wood. Her hands trembled slightly as attorneys discussed financing structures and LLC protections. Everything felt surreal. Not long ago, she cried quietly in luxury bathrooms while pretending her marriage still existed. Now strangers in suits were discussing her acquisition strategy. One attorney slid the paperwork toward her. "Whenever you're ready, Mrs. Snyder." Mae stared at the signature line. Then suddenly her phone buzzed. Lucas. She watched his name flash across the screen. For a brief moment, old instincts returned. Answer him. Prioritize him. Center him. Instead, Mae silenced the phone. Then she picked up the pen and signed the offer herself. The strangest part of transformation was how invisible it looked at first. Nobody noticed the exact moment Mae Snyder stopped shrinking. Not Lucas, not Evelyn, not even Mae herself. It began quietly, with posture. One morning, Mae stood in front of her closet staring at rows of soft, neutral sweaters and modest dresses she had unconsciously chosen over the years because they made other people comfortable. Safe colors, safe silhouettes, safe woman. She slowly reached past all of them and pulled out a fitted black blazer she hadn't worn in years. When she entered the kitchen that morning, Lucas actually looked up from his phone. His eyes lingered for half a second longer than usual. "You're dressed up." Mae poured coffee calmly. "I have meetings downtown." Lucas frowned slightly. "What meetings? Business meetings?" The confusion on his face almost amused her. Lucas wasn't confused because Mae had plans. He was confused because she suddenly sounded like someone with a life outside him. Before, Mae explained everything automatically. Now she simply sipped her coffee. Lucas studied her carefully. With who Mae met his eyes. Why, the silence that followed felt subtle but important. Lucas leaned back slowly. "You're acting strange lately?" "No." She was acting unfamiliar. There was a difference. Mae smiled faintly. "I think I'm just tired of acting small." Lucas laughed softly like she was joking. That hurt more than anger somehow, because he genuinely couldn't imagine her changing. That afternoon, Mae met Marcus Bennett again, inside a quiet private restaurant overlooking the river. This time she arrived carrying folders. Real folders. Financial notes, property research, market evaluations. Marcus raised an eyebrow approvingly. "Well," he said while sitting down. "There she is." Mae blinked. Who? The woman underneath all that apologizing. Heat rose unexpectedly into Mae's chest. No one had spoken to her like that in years, not as fragile, as capable. Marcus reviewed her notes while she explained everything she'd researched about the Lakeshore Drive property. The more Mae talked, the more confident her voice became. Occupancy percentages, long-term equity potential, renovation leverage. Marcus listened quietly before finally smiling. "You're good at this." Mae almost dismissed the compliment automatically. Then she stopped herself, because she was beginning to notice something uncomfortable. Women like her had been trained to reject their own competence instantly. Instead, Mae simply said, "Thank you." Marcus nodded slightly like that answer mattered. And somehow, it did. Meanwhile, at home, Lucas was growing increasingly restless. Mae noticed it in the way he watched her now. Not lovingly, cautiously. One evening she returned from downtown carrying legal folders when Lucas appeared in the hallway. "Where were you at meetings?" With who Mae removed her coat calmly. Lawyers, investors. Lucas stared at her, for what Mae walked past him toward the kitchen. "I'm exploring options." "What options?" She opened the refrigerator casually. "Life options." Lucas followed her immediately. "What does that mean?" Mae turned slowly. The old version of herself would have panicked under his intensity. Now she just looked tired. "It means I'm trying to remember who I was before this marriage became my entire identity." Lucas scoffed softly. "You're being dramatic again." There it was. His favorite weapon. Mae leaned against the counter. "Do you know something interesting, Lucas?" He crossed his arms. "What I used to think you called me dramatic because I was emotional." Lucas frowned slightly. Mae's eyes held his steadily now, but actually, "You call me dramatic anytime I say something inconvenient." For the first time in years, Lucas had no immediate response. Mae walked away before he could recover. That night she sat in Rachel Monroe's office reviewing financial protection documents. Rachel looked impressed. "You're adapting faster than most clients." Mae gave a humorless smile. Pain is a very efficient teacher. Rachel slid another folder across the desk. "We need to prepare for asset separation." Mae nodded quietly. Rachel studied her carefully. "Do you still love him?" The question hurt unexpectedly. Mae looked down at her hands. "I love who I thought he was." Rachel leaned back slightly. "That distinction will save your life." Later that week, Evelyn invited herself over again. Mae opened the front door wearing fitted trousers and heels, fresh from another meeting downtown. Evelyn's eyes narrowed instantly. "Well," she said coldly, stepping inside, "someone's suddenly ambitious." Mae closed the door calmly. "I've always been ambitious." Evelyn laughed lightly. "Oh, please. Women with ambition don't disappear into kitchens for 12 years. The comment would have shattered Mae months earlier. Now it simply clarified things. Evelyn only respected women who mirrored her own hardness. Kindness meant weakness to her. Mae walked toward the living room. "You know," she said quietly, "for someone who dislikes me so much, you've depended on me quite heavily." Evelyn blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" Mae faced her fully. "I took care of your appointments, your medications, your emergencies, your holidays, your son." Evelyn's mouth tightened. "That's what wives do." Mae smiled faintly. "No, that's what unpaid emotional labor looks like." The older woman stared at her in disbelief. Not because Mae was wrong, because Mae was finally speaking. Evelyn recovered quickly. "Lucas says you've been acting unstable lately." Mae almost laughed. "Of course he did." Men often called women unstable the moment they developed boundaries. I'm actually the calmest I've been in years, Mae replied. Evelyn stepped closer. You think independence makes you powerful? Mae tilted her head slightly. No, I think self-respect does. The silence between them sharpened instantly. For the first time, Evelyn looked unsettled. Because bullies relied on predictable victims, and Mae was no longer predictable. A few days later, Marcus invited Mae to observe a commercial negotiation meeting downtown. At first, she hesitated. I'm not qualified for that. Marcus gave her a long look. Mae, do you know what powerful people do constantly? What they walk into rooms before they feel ready? The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours. Developers argued numbers aggressively while attorneys negotiated terms with surgical precision. And to Mae's shock, she understood most of it. Not perfectly, but enough. More importantly, she enjoyed it, the strategy, the leverage, the intelligence. For years, Lucas made her feel intellectually small because her labor happened inside domestic spaces instead of boardrooms. Now Mae realized something infuriating. Managing a luxury household complex schedules, finances, social networks, and emotional crises for 12 years required enormous intelligence. Nobody respected it because women performed it quietly. After the meeting, Marcus walked beside her toward the parking garage. You stopped apologizing halfway through, he observed. Mae blinked. What? You interrupted a man during negotiations? A small smile tugged at her lips. I did, didn't I? And you were right. For the first time in months, Mae laughed genuinely. The sound startled even her. Meanwhile, Lucas was beginning to panic. Not openly, subtly. He started texting more often during the day. Where are you? When will you be home? Did you make dinner plans? Mae answered politely but briefly. Distance changed relationship dynamics faster than confrontation ever could. One evening, Lucas entered the bedroom while Mae reviewed property paperwork. What's all this? Mae didn't look up. Research. Lucas picked up one document. Lakeshore Drive. Residences LLC. His expression changed instantly. Why are you looking at this building? Mae closed the folder slowly. Why are you? For a split second, genuine alarm flashed across his face. Then it disappeared behind irritation. You've been going through my things again? Mae stood calmly. You've been lying to my face for years. Lucas stepped closer. You don't understand how complicated business relationships work. Mae laughed softly. No, I understand perfectly now. Lucas stared at her, and for the first time since their marriage began, he looked uncertain of his control over her. That same week, Rachel called Mae with news. The seller accepted your offer. Mae stopped breathing. What? Rachel smiled faintly through the phone. Congratulations, Mae. Pending final closing. You're about to own the building. Mae sat down slowly at the edge of her bed. Her hands trembled violently, not from fear, from realization. After 12 years of being treated like she couldn't survive alone, Mae Snyder had just become a property owner worth millions, and nobody in her family had the slightest idea. The charity gala took place inside the Grand Regent Hotel in downtown Chicago. Everything about the event screamed old money and carefully manufactured perfection. Crystal chandeliers, violin music, champagne towers, women in silk gowns pretending not to judge each other. Mae stood in front of the ballroom entrance adjusting the sleeve of her dark emerald dress while watching luxury cars pull up beneath the glowing hotel lights. A year ago, she would have felt nervous attending an event like this. Tonight she felt something different. Detached. Like she was observing a life she no longer belonged to emotionally. Lucas stepped out beside her wearing a black tuxedo impossibly polished as always. For a brief second, Mae understood why people admired him so easily. Lucas Snyder looked like safety to the outside world. Not cruelty, not betrayal, just success wrapped in expensive tailoring. He glanced at her dress and paused. You look nice tonight. Mae almost laughed at the simplicity of it. Nice. Not beautiful. Not breathtaking. Not the way husbands looked at women they still loved. Just nice. Thank you, she said calmly. Lucas frowned slightly at her tone. The old Mae would have brightened emotionally over scraps of approval. This version simply acknowledged them. Inside the ballroom, wealthy executives moved through conversations like sharks in designer suits. The air smelled faintly of perfume whiskey and hidden affairs. Mae instantly noticed Vanessa. Of course she did. Women always notice the woman. Vanessa Cole stood near the bar in a sleek white satin gown, laughing softly beside two executives. Her dark blonde hair fell perfectly over one shoulder, while diamond earrings flashed beneath ballroom lights. She looked elegant, dangerously elegant. But what unsettled Mae most wasn't Vanessa's beauty. It was her confidence. The confidence of a woman who believed she had already won. Lucas noticed Vanessa seconds later. Mae saw it happen in real time, the slight posture shift, the unconscious focus, the softened expression. Tiny things. Tiny, devastating things. "Excuse me for a minute," Lucas said casually. Mae watched him walk directly toward Vanessa. Neither of them noticed the way her chest tightened. Or maybe they did. Maybe they simply no longer cared. Mae moved toward the champagne table slowly, forcing herself to breathe normally. A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "You're observing them too hard." Mae turned to find Marcus Bennett standing beside her in a charcoal suit. She blinked in surprise. "What are you doing here?" Marcus smiled faintly. "I donated enough money to deserve mediocre chicken and overpriced wine." Despite everything, Mae laughed softly. Marcus studied her expression carefully before glancing toward Lucas and Vanessa across the ballroom. "Ah," he said quietly. "That explains the face." Mae looked away immediately. "I don't know what you mean." "Mae?" Something about the gentleness in his tone nearly broke her composure. Marcus handed her a champagne glass. "You don't need to pretend you're unaffected." Mae swallowed hard. "It's humiliating." Marcus nodded once. "Yes. No minimizing. No gaslighting. No, you're overreacting. Just truth." And somehow truth felt kinder than comfort. Across the room, Vanessa touched Lucas's arm while laughing at something he whispered. The intimacy of the gesture hit Mae harder than she expected. Because affairs rarely began in bedrooms. They began in emotional permission. Mae stared quietly at them. "I spent years trying to become easier to love," she admitted softly. Marcus looked at her carefully. "And did it work?" Mae felt tears threaten briefly. "No." Marcus took a slow sip of champagne. "That's because emotionally selfish people don't reward sacrifice. They consume it." The sentence settled deep inside her chest. Before Mae could respond, Evelyn Harper suddenly appeared beside them, wearing a silver gown and sharp judgment. "There you are," Evelyn said to Mae. "People are asking where Lucas's wife disappeared to." Her eyes flicked briefly toward Marcus. "And who is this Marcus Bennett?" he said calmly, extending his hand. Recognition flashed across Evelyn's face instantly. The Bennett family name carried weight in Chicago real estate circles. Suddenly, her entire demeanor softened artificially. "Well," she said smoothly, shaking his hand. "Lovely to meet you." Mae almost smiled. Interesting how quickly respect appeared when money entered the room. Evelyn leaned closer toward Mae. "Vanessa is extraordinary, isn't she?" Mae looked at her slowly. "What?" Evelyn sighed dramatically. "She's intelligent, driven, sophisticated." The implication hung heavily between them. Everything Mae supposedly wasn't. Marcus's expression hardened slightly beside her, but Evelyn continued. "Some women are simply more suited for powerful men." Mae felt the old humiliation rise instinctively. Then something surprising happened. It passed. Not because the words hurt less, because Mae finally understood Evelyn's cruelty had never actually been about her. It was projection. A woman who built identity through male validation could never respect softness. Mae met Evelyn's gaze steadily. "You seem very invested in Vanessa." Evelyn smiled coldly. "I appreciate ambitious women." Marcus spoke before Mae could respond. "Ambition without character becomes narcissism remarkably fast." Evelyn stiffened slightly. Mae nearly smiled into her champagne. Across the ballroom, Lucas finally noticed Marcus standing beside her, and for the first time all evening, Lucas looked uneasy. Good. Let him feel uncertain for once. A few minutes later, Lucas approached them with Vanessa beside him. Vanessa's smile was flawless. "Mae," she greeted warmly. "You look beautiful tonight." The lie was expertly delivered. Mae smiled politely. "So do you." Vanessa turned toward Marcus. "And you are Marcus Bennett." Again recognition. Again subtle recalculation. Vanessa hit it better than Evelyn had, but Mae still noticed. Women like Vanessa assessed value instantly. Lucas cleared his throat awkwardly. "Marcus works in commercial real estate." Marcus smiled slightly. among other things. Vanessa's eyes sharpened with interest. Of course they did. The conversation remained polite on the surface, but beneath it Mae sensed constant tension shifting invisibly between everyone there. Then Vanessa made the mistake. The deliberate one. She looked directly at Mae and said lightly, "I always admire women who can dedicate themselves fully to domestic life. I'd go insane without work personally." The table went silent. Subtle enough to deny, cruel enough to wound. Classic Vanessa. Mae noticed Lucas watching her carefully now, almost waiting for emotional collapse. The old Mae would have laughed nervously, minimized herself, made everyone comfortable again. Instead, she smiled calmly. "That's understandable," Mae replied. "Some women need careers to feel valuable, others don't." Vanessa's expression flickered briefly. Small victory, but enough. Later that evening, Mae escaped onto the ballroom balcony overlooking the glittering Chicago skyline. Cold wind swept against her bare shoulders while distant traffic glowed beneath the city lights. For several moments, she simply breathed. Then Lucas appeared behind her. "There you are." Mae didn't turn around. "You seem tense tonight." Lucas sighed. "You've been acting strange for weeks." Mae laughed softly at the irony. A husband cheats emotionally, lies. Financially, humiliates his wife publicly, and her emotional withdrawal becomes the problem. Lucas stepped beside her. "You embarrassed Vanessa earlier." Mae finally looked at him. Interesting choice of concern. Lucas rubbed his jaw impatiently. "She was just making conversation." "No," Mae said quietly. "She was measuring herself against me." Lucas's silence confirmed everything. Mae stared out across the city again. "I used to think women like Vanessa were the problem." Lucas frowned. "What does that mean?" Mae's voice remained calm. "But women like her only exist because men like you create space for them." Lucas looked genuinely irritated now. "You're becoming bitter." Mae almost laughed. No, she was becoming aware. Behind them, ballroom music drifted softly through open doors, while wealthy strangers celebrated fake happiness beneath chandeliers. Mae suddenly felt exhausted by all of it. The pretending, the performance, the humiliation disguised as marriage. Then her phone vibrated quietly inside her clutch purse. She glanced down. A message from Rachel Monroe. Closing confirmed. Ownership officially transferred this afternoon. Mae stopped breathing for half a second. Then, slowly, very slowly, she smiled. Not at Lucas, not at revenge, at herself. Because for the first time in 12 years, Mae Snyder finally knew something none of them did. The woman they called just a housewife now owned the building Evelyn Harper lived in. And soon, everything was going to change. Owning the building didn't make Mae feel powerful immediately. It made her feel careful, because real power wasn't loud. It moved quietly behind signatures, contracts, and calm decisions while everyone else underestimated it. 3 days after the gala, Mae sat inside the Lakeshore Drive property management office, reviewing tenant files beside 2 attorneys from Rachel Monroe's firm. Rain slid down the floor-to-ceiling windows, while Chicago traffic glowed below the skyline. Everything smelled faintly of fresh coffee and expensive paper. One attorney flipped through a lease agreement. "Unit 18? A," he said, "Evelyn Harper." Mae kept her face neutral. Even hearing the name inside legal documents felt surreal. Not mother-in-law anymore. Tenant. The thought should have felt satisfying. Instead, it felt clarifying. For years, Evelyn spoke to Mae like she existed beneath her. Now both women existed inside a system where contracts mattered more than ego. And for the first time in their relationship, Mae held the leverage. The attorney continued. "There are several lease violations." Mae looked up slowly. "What kind? Unauthorized long-term guests? Renovation modifications without approval? Repeated staff complaints?" Mae blinked. That sounded exactly like Evelyn. Entitled people often treated rules like insults. The attorney slid another document toward her. "Legally, you have options." Mae stared at the paperwork silently. Eviction, warnings, financial penalties, control. For one dangerous second, revenge tempted her. Not screaming revenge, quiet revenge. The kind that whispered, "Make her feel small too." But then Mae remembered something Rachel once said during a strategy meeting. If you become cruel to prove you're strong, they still control who you are. Mae slowly pushed the papers back. "I want everything handled professionally," she said calmly. "No emotional decisions." The attorney nodded. Understood. Professional. The word felt foreign in her mouth, but she liked the taste of it. Meanwhile, at home, Lucas was becoming increasingly unsettled by her transformation. That evening, Mae entered the kitchen carrying folders from another downtown meeting when Lucas looked up sharply from the island counter. "You've been gone constantly lately." Mae set the folders down calmly. "I've been working." Lucas frowned immediately. "Working on what exactly?" Mae opened the refrigerator. "Projects." His irritation visibly deepened. What projects? The old Mae would have explained herself immediately. Now she simply poured sparkling water into a glass. Lucas stepped closer. "You're hiding something." Mae almost smiled at the irony. After months of hidden affairs and financial lies, suddenly secrecy bothered him. She leaned lightly against the counter. "Does dishonesty only upset you when someone else does it?" Lucas's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to talk to you." "No," Mae replied quietly. "You're trying to regain control of the conversation." The silence that followed felt sharp. Lucas stared at her carefully now, like he was meeting a stranger wearing his wife's face. "You've changed." Mae nodded once. "Yes." No apology attached. That seemed to disturb him most. Lucas exhaled slowly. "Is this about Vanessa?" Mae laughed softly. "That's the problem, Lucas. What, you still think this is about another woman?" Lucas crossed his arms defensively. "Then, what is it about Mae?" Met his eyes steadily. "It's about realizing I abandoned myself long before you abandoned me." The words landed harder than yelling ever could have. Lucas looked momentarily speechless. Then irritation returned quickly. "You're talking like someone in therapy." Mae almost laughed again. "No." She was talking like someone finally awake. That Sunday, Evelyn hosted another family dinner. Of course she did. Control-driven women loved gathering audiences before emotional executions. Mae stood upstairs getting dressed while staring at herself in the mirror. For years, she prepared for these dinners emotionally like someone entering battle without armor. Tonight felt different. Not because she wasn't anxious, because she was done begging to be loved correctly. Downstairs, Lucas adjusted his cufflinks impatiently. "You almost ready?" Mae descended the staircase slowly, wearing a fitted ivory dress and gold earrings Diane once gave her years earlier. Lucas looked up and froze briefly. Not because the dress was revealing, because confidence changed a woman's entire energy. For years, Mae moved through rooms trying not to take up too much emotional space. Now she simply existed fully. Lucas's eyes lingered longer than usual. "You look—" He stopped. Mae waited calmly. "Different," he finished quietly. Mae smiled faintly. "Thank you." At Evelyn's house, the atmosphere felt tense almost immediately. Jordan Harper greeted them politely from the living room, while football played quietly in the background. Unlike Evelyn, Jordan rarely insulted Mae openly. He simply enabled it silently, another form of cowardice. Dinner began, normally enough expensive wine, political conversations, subtle judgment hidden beneath polished manners. Then Evelyn began. She always did eventually. "I saw Vanessa at the gala," she announced casually while cutting into salmon. "What an impressive woman." Mae took a sip of wine calmly. Lucas stiffened beside her. Evelyn continued smiling. "She reminds me of women from my generation. Ambitious, refined, disciplined. Translation: not like Mae." Jordan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Lucas avoided eye contact entirely. Same pattern, different dinner. But this time, Mae noticed something important. Silence no longer hurt her the same way, because she finally understood Lucas staying quiet wasn't proof she deserved disrespect. It was proof he lacked integrity. Evelyn turned toward Mae directly. "You know, dear, I always wondered whether staying home for so many years made you intellectually restless." Mae dabbed her napkin slowly. "Not particularly." Evelyn smiled thinly. "I suppose some women simply don't need much stimulation." Lucas muttered softly, "Mom," but there was no conviction in it, just performance. Mae set her wineglass down carefully. "You're right about one thing," she said calmly. The table went quiet. Evelyn blinked slightly. "Oh," Mae's voice remained perfectly composed. "Some women spend so much time seeking external validation that they mistake cruelty for sophistication." Jordan coughed awkwardly into his napkin. Lucas stared at Mae in shock. Evelyn's smile disappeared instantly. "Excuse me?" Mae held her gaze steadily. For years I confused your criticism with authority. She tilted her head slightly. That was my mistake. The room felt electrically tense now. Lucas leaned toward Mae under the table. What are you doing? Mae looked at him calmly, speaking honestly. Evelyn's face hardened. You've become incredibly disrespectful lately. There it was. Women gaining boundaries always became disrespectful to people benefiting from their silence. Mae smiled faintly. No, I just stopped apologizing for existing. Complete silence. Even the air felt heavy. Lucas looked furious now, not at his mother, at Mae, because her confidence disrupted the emotional hierarchy everyone depended on. After dinner, Mae stepped onto the back patio alone while cold night air swept through the yard. A few moments later, Lucas followed her outside. What the hell was that? Mae turned slowly. What part? You embarrassed my mother. Mae stared at him in disbelief. Interesting. You never seemed concerned when she embarrassed me? Lucas rubbed his forehead aggressively. She's older. She says things. And you allow them. Lucas's expression darkened. You've been impossible lately. Mae laughed softly. Impossible to control. The words hit him visibly. Lucas stepped closer. You know what, fine? You want honesty. Mae folded her arms. Yes. Lucas's voice sharpened. You've changed into someone cold. For a second, old pain surfaced. Then Mae realized something devastating. Women like her were expected to remain warm while being emotionally burned alive. The moment they stopped bleeding willingly, they became cold. Mae looked directly at him. No, Lucas. Her voice stayed calm. I just stopped begging for love from people who enjoy withholding it. Lucas stared at her silently. For the first time in years, Mae didn't feel afraid of his disappointment, and that terrified him. Later that night, while Lucas showered upstairs, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Mae glanced down instinctively. A message from Vanessa appeared across the screen. The divorce is almost handled right. Mae stared at the words for several seconds. Then another message appeared. I'm tired of hiding. Slowly, Mae smiled. Not because it hurt less, because now she knew exactly how close they believed they were to winning, and neither of them had any idea what was coming. The night of Lucas Snyder's promotion party arrived wrapped in snow and expensive lies. Chicago glittered outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of the private rooftop venue, while wealthy executives filled the room with polished laughter and calculated networking smiles. Everything looked beautiful. That was always the danger of appearances. Mae stood in front of the mirror inside the venue's private restroom, staring at her reflection. Black silk dress, diamond earrings, perfect makeup. No visible evidence of heartbreak. A year ago, she would have focused on whether Lucas found her attractive tonight. Now she wondered something else entirely. How much longer had he planned to keep humiliating her before finally discarding her publicly? Her phone buzzed softly. Rachel Monroe. Everything is ready whenever you are. Mae stared at the message for several seconds before typing back, tonight. Her pulse steadied immediately afterward. No fear, no panic, just clarity. When Mae stepped back into the ballroom, conversations softened subtly around her. She noticed it more lately, people watching her differently. Not because they suddenly respected her, because confidence unsettled people who benefited from her insecurity. Across the room, Lucas stood surrounded by executives near the champagne tower, looking perfectly at home in wealth and admiration. The successful golden man, the devoted son, the polished husband. Only Mae knew how emotionally hollow the performance really was. Then she saw Vanessa. Of course she did. Vanessa Cole wore a fitted silver gown tonight, elegant and deliberate enough to attract attention without appearing desperate for it. But what made Mae's stomach tighten wasn't the dress. It was the bracelet. A thin diamond tennis bracelet resting elegantly on Vanessa's wrist. Mae recognized it instantly. 3 months earlier, she had shown Lucas that exact bracelet online, while joking lightly about how beautiful it was. Lucas laughed at the time. $40,000 for a bracelet? Absolutely not. Now it glittered on Vanessa's arm beneath ballroom lights. For one dangerous second, rage surged through Mae so intensely, she almost lost composure. Not because of the money, because Lucas had looked her in the eyes while pretending she wasn't worth generosity anymore. Meanwhile, he spent lavishly on another woman. The humiliation burned hot beneath her skin. You okay? Mae turned to find Marcus beside her again, holding 2 champagne glasses. She accepted one carefully. I'm fine. Marcus followed her gaze toward Vanessa, then he noticed the bracelet. His expression darkened instantly. Mae swallowed hard. I picked that bracelet out. Marcus exhaled slowly through his nose. That's cruel. Mae laughed softly without humor. No, cruel would have required honesty. Across the ballroom, Lucas noticed Mae staring toward Vanessa, and for the first time all evening, he looked nervous. Good. Let him feel watched for once. An hour later, dinner service began. The rooftop ballroom glowed gold beneath chandeliers, while executives took seats around massive floral centerpieces. Mae sat beside Lucas at the head table while Evelyn Harper floated through conversations like she personally owned the city. Lucas leaned toward Mae quietly. Please don't start anything tonight. Mae turned slowly. The audacity nearly impressed her. You think I'm the threat here? Lucas rubbed his jaw. You've been unpredictable lately. Unpredictable. Interesting word. Women were predictable when they tolerated disrespect silently. Boundaries changed that. Before Mae could answer, Evelyn tapped her champagne glass dramatically. The room quieted instantly. Oh, I just have to say something, Evelyn announced warmly. Tonight is such a proud moment for our family. Lucas smiled modestly while executives applauded politely. Evelyn continued. Watching Lucas rise through the company all these years has been extraordinary. His discipline, ambition, intelligence. Mae felt her stomach tighten slowly, because she already knew what was coming. Evelyn glanced briefly toward Vanessa. And of course, she added with a smile, successful men become successful because they surround themselves with people who truly understand their vision. Subtle, but not subtle enough. Several guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Lucas said nothing. Again. Mae looked down at her wineglass quietly while Evelyn continued praising Lucas like he built his life alone. No mention of Mae. Not one. Not the years of support, not the sacrifices, not the emotional labor holding his entire existence together. 12 years erased publicly in under 3 minutes. Then Evelyn laughed lightly and delivered the final blow. Some women contribute ambition, she said smoothly. Others simply contribute comfort. The room went still. Mae heard someone shift uncomfortably nearby. Even wealthy people recognized cruelty when it became too obvious. Lucas stared down at the table silently, coward. The word arrived calmly now, not emotionally, factually. Evelyn smiled toward Mae with poisonous sweetness. But every man needs peace at home, don't they? Something inside Mae finally detached completely. Not shattered, detached. Like the last thread tying her self-worth to their approval had finally snapped. And strangely, the absence of pain felt peaceful. Mae slowly lifted her eyes around the room. Executives, socialites, corporate wives, performers, everyone waiting to see whether she would swallow humiliation quietly again. Lucas leaned toward her under the table. Just ignore her. Mae looked at him. For 12 years, she had mistaken his silence for weakness. Tonight, she finally recognized it correctly. Selfishness. Because staying silent protected his comfort while destroying her dignity. And suddenly, Mae felt done. Completely done. She placed her napkin carefully beside her plate and stood. The room fell silent almost immediately. Lucas looked alarmed. Mae. Ignoring him, Mae reached for the microphone near the podium. Evelyn blinked in visible confusion. What are you doing? Mae smiled calmly. Speaking. Lucas stood halfway from his chair. This isn't the time. Mae looked directly at him. That's interesting, she said softly. I think it's the perfect time. The ballroom became painfully quiet. Even the musicians had stopped. Mae turned slowly toward the crowd. For a brief moment, old fear returned. The fear of taking up space, the fear of being called dramatic, the fear of becoming inconvenient. Then she remembered every night she cried alone beside a man who no longer loved her honestly, and the fear disappeared. Mae lifted the microphone calmly. I think Evelyn is right about one thing, she began. Across the room, Vanessa's confident smile returned slightly. She thought Mae was about to break publicly. Poor thing, Mae continued. Successful men do surround themselves with people who support their vision. Lucas closed his eyes briefly. He knew. Some part of him finally knew the performance was collapsing. Mae's voice remained perfectly composed. For 12 years, I supported Lucas's career while abandoning my own. I hosted the dinners, managed the home, protected his image, absorbed the insults, smiled through disrespect. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Mae glanced toward Evelyn, and through all of it, I was repeatedly reminded that I was just a housewife. Evelyn's expression hardened. Mae. No, Mae interrupted gently. You've spoken enough for 12 years. The room practically vibrated with tension now. Lucas stood fully. Mae, stop. She looked directly at him. You should have defended me years ago. The silence after that sentence felt devastating, because everyone there suddenly understood this wasn't a dramatic wife causing a scene. This was a woman finally telling the truth. Mae slowly reached into her purse and removed a folded document. Then she smiled, calmly, beautifully, dangerously. Well, she said softly into the microphone, that's what makes tonight so ironic. Evelyn frowned. Mae unfolded the paperwork carefully. Because this morning? Her eyes locked onto Evelyn's. I officially became the owner of the Lakeshore Drive building you live in. Silence. Absolute silence. Evelyn's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered violently across the marble floor. Lucas went completely pale, and across the room, Vanessa finally realized she had underestimated the wrong woman. The silence after the wine glass shattered felt almost unreal. Crystal fragments scattered across the marble floor, while every wealthy guest inside the ballroom stared at Mae Snyder like she had transformed into someone else entirely. Maybe she had. Evelyn Harper's face drained of color. What did you just say? Mae stood beneath the chandelier lights, holding the microphone calmly while Lucas looked seconds away from collapse. Not angry, terrified. Good. For 12 years, Mae had been the only one afraid in this marriage. Now the fear belonged to them. Mae folded the ownership documents carefully. I said she repeated softly, I purchased the Lakeshore Drive property this morning. A murmur spread through the ballroom immediately. Executives exchanged stunned glances. Socialites leaned toward each other, whispering rapidly. Even the waitstaff had frozen, because scandals were entertaining, but powerful women becoming unpredictable. That made people nervous. Lucas finally found his voice. Mae, he said sharply, put the microphone down. The command in his tone almost made her laugh. Still trying to control her publicly, Mae turned toward him slowly. For years, she said into the microphone, I did exactly what you wanted. Lucas's jaw tightened. This isn't the place? No, Mae replied calmly. You lost the right to decide that. Across the room, Vanessa stood completely still beside the bar, her face pale beneath carefully applied makeup. For the first time since Mae met her, Vanessa looked uncertain. Not because of the building, because she suddenly realized Lucas no longer controlled the narrative. Mae continued speaking. 12 years ago, I gave up my career to support my husband. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, and for 12 years I was told that sacrifice made me small. Evelyn recovered enough to scoff loudly. Oh, please, don't turn yourself into a martyr. Mae looked directly at her. You called me just a housewife in front of strangers for over a decade. Evelyn lifted her chin defensively. Well, maybe if you'd actually done something with your life, Mom, Lucas snapped suddenly. The room went silent again. Interesting. Now he wanted her quiet. Mae almost smiled. Too late. She stepped away from the table slowly. Do you know what's funny? She asked softly. The entire time you all treated me like I was financially dependent. I was studying. Lucas's expression shifted instantly. Mae saw it happen. Confusion, fear, calculation. I learned investment strategy, she continued. Property law, asset management. Vanessa crossed her arms tightly now. Marcus watched quietly from the back of the room, saying nothing. Mae looked toward the crowd again. While everyone laughed at the housewife, her voice sharpened slightly. The housewife was learning ownership. The sentence landed heavily, because everyone in that room understood the difference between income and ownership. Lucas moved toward her, finally lowering his voice. We'll talk about this privately. Mae stared at him. There it was again. Control the optics, contain the damage, protect the image. She suddenly felt exhausted by how predictable he was. No, she said softly. You've hidden enough things privately. Lucas's face darkened. Mae. She ignored him. Instead, she turned toward Vanessa directly for the first time all evening. The room practically held its breath. Vanessa lifted her chin carefully. Mae's eyes drifted down briefly toward the diamond bracelet sparkling against her wrist. then back up. That bracelet looks beautiful on you. Vanessa froze. Lucas closed his eyes briefly like he already knew where this was going. Mae smiled calmly. I picked it out originally. A collective wave of discomfort swept through the room. Vanessa's expression cracked slightly. It's not what you think, she said quickly. Mae almost pitied her. Women always said that, as though betrayal became morally sophisticated if packaged elegantly enough. I actually don't care anymore what it is, Mae replied. And the terrifying part? She meant it. The pain had already burned itself empty. All that remained now was clarity. Lucas grabbed Mae's arm, suddenly, not violently, but firmly enough to make several guests notice. Stop embarrassing us. Mae looked down at his hand, then slowly back at him. Us. Her voice stayed dangerously soft. You stopped being an us the moment you made me feel alone inside my own marriage. Lucas released her immediately. Good. Let them all watch him unravel. Evelyn stood abruptly from her chair. This is absurd, she snapped. You're behaving like some bitter little woman because Lucas had harmless attention from another female. Mae turned toward her slowly. No, she said calmly. I'm behaving like a woman who finally realized kindness and weakness are not the same thing. Evelyn laughed bitterly. You think buying property suddenly makes you powerful? Mae tilted her head slightly. No. A small pause. But it certainly makes me your landlord. A few people audibly gasped. Jordan Harper looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Vanessa grabbed her clutch purse tightly. Lucas looked seconds from exploding. And yet Mae herself felt strangely peaceful, because for the first time in 12 years, she wasn't shrinking. Rachel Monroe stepped quietly into the ballroom, then carrying another folder. Perfect timing. Mae took the documents calmly. Lucas's face went completely pale. What is that? Mae opened the folder carefully. Divorce papers. The room erupted instantly into whispers. Evelyn looked genuinely horrified now. You can't be serious. Mae glanced at her. That's interesting coming from someone who spent years convincing me I contributed nothing. Lucas stepped closer again, voice lower now. Mae, don't do this publicly. She met his eyes steadily, while she asked softly. You humiliated me publicly? That's not the same thing. The answer came too fast, too honest. Mae almost smiled sadly. No, she agreed quietly. It's worse. Lucas looked around the ballroom desperately now, suddenly aware of how many executives were watching him. The polished corporate image was cracking in real time. Good. Because reputations built on women's silent suffering deserved to collapse. Vanessa stepped forward carefully. Mae, I didn't know things were this bad between you two. Mae looked at her for several long seconds, then finally asked, Did you ever care? Vanessa opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Exactly. Mae nodded faintly. That's what I thought. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then, unexpectedly, Marcus's voice cut through the silence from the back of the room. Gentlemen, he said calmly to several executives nearby, this is why intelligent women should never be underestimated. Several men looked deeply uncomfortable, as they should. Mae folded the divorce papers carefully and handed them toward Lucas. His hands trembled slightly when he took them. You already filed? Mae nodded once. Weeks ago. Lucas stared at her like he genuinely couldn't process reality anymore. You planned all this, Mae considered the question. No, she said honestly. I survived all this. That sentence broke something in the room, because suddenly everyone understood this wasn't revenge born from ego. This was a woman rebuilding herself after years of emotional erosion. Lucas lowered his voice again desperately. We can fix this. Mae almost cried then. Not because she believed him, because he waited until she stopped needing him to finally sound afraid of losing her. Too late. So painfully too late. Mae stepped backwards slowly. For 12 years she said quietly, I begged to be treated like I mattered. Lucas's eyes reddened slightly, and now Mae looked directly at him. Now I know I do. The silence after that felt enormous. Then Mae handed the microphone back to the stunned event coordinator, picked up her coat calmly, and walked toward the ballroom exit. Nobody stopped her. Nobody knew how. Because the woman leaving the room was no longer the quiet housewife they thought they understood. And somewhere behind her, Lucas Snyder finally realized he had just lost the best thing that ever happened to him. The mansion felt unfamiliar the night Mae returned home after the promotion party. Not because the house had changed, because she had. Snow drifted softly outside the massive windows, while silence settled heavily across the marble floors. For 12 years, Mae treated this house like a sacred responsibility. Now it felt like a museum dedicated to her exhaustion. She walked upstairs slowly, heels clicking against polished hardwood, and entered the master bedroom she once believed represented stability. A few minutes later, the front door slammed downstairs. Lucas. Mae closed her eyes briefly, right on time. Heavy footsteps moved rapidly through the house, before Lucas appeared in the bedroom doorway, still wearing his tuxedo jacket half open like he'd forgotten how to breathe properly. What the hell was that tonight? Mae calmly removed her earrings. Interesting. Not, why are you hurting? Not, I'm sorry, just anger. Because humiliation only mattered when it happened to him. You mean the truth? Mae asked quietly. Lucas stared at her in disbelief. You blindsided me in front of my entire company. Mae turned toward him slowly. And you cheated on me while I sacrificed my entire life for you. Lucas ran both hands through his hair aggressively. It wasn't an affair. Mae almost laughed. Even now. Still lying. Lucas, she said softly, you bought another woman jewelry while emotionally abandoning your wife. That's not what this is. Then explain it. Lucas opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Exactly. Mae moved toward the closet calmly and pulled out a suitcase. Lucas froze. What are you doing packing? The panic in his face arrived instantly. No. The single word came out sharp, possessive. Mae continued folding clothes carefully. You don't get to decide that anymore. Lucas stepped forward. You're overreacting. Mae stopped moving, then slowly looked at him. For 12 years that phrase controlled her. Overreacting. Too emotional, too sensitive. Now it just sounded lazy. My husband emotionally cheated on me, hid money, allowed his mother to humiliate me publicly for years. Mae zipped the suitcase halfway closed. If anything, I underreacted. Lucas paced angrily across the room. You embarrassed me tonight. Mae's expression hardened slightly. There it is again. What? Everything always comes back to how things affect you. Lucas scoffed bitterly. You think you're some victim? Mae stared at him in disbelief. Victim? Such a convenient word men used when women finally stopped tolerating pain quietly. I think Mae said carefully, I spent 12 years making your life easier while slowly disappearing. Lucas shook his head. You chose that. The cruelty of the statement landed with surgical precision. Mae looked away briefly because despite everything, that one still hurt. Because deep down, some part of her feared he was right. She had chosen sacrifice, chosen silence, chosen survival over self-respect repeatedly. But then she remembered something Rachel told her weeks earlier. Manipulation works best when it convinces you your pain was your own fault. Mae lifted her eyes again. No, she said quietly. I chose love. You chose comfort. Lucas fell silent. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then, unexpectedly, Lucas's anger cracked slightly. Mae. His voice softened, dangerously softened, the version he used whenever he sensed her pulling emotionally away. I know I haven't been perfect. Mae nearly laughed from exhaustion. Not perfect, as if betrayal was poor communication. Lucas stepped closer slowly. But we can fix this. Mae looked at him carefully. How? Lucas hesitated. We'll go to therapy. We'll travel. We'll reconnect. Interesting. Now he wanted effort. Now he wanted repair. Only after she stopped begging for it. Mae sat slowly on the edge of the bed. You know what the saddest part is? Lucas crouched slightly in front of her. What Mae's eyes filled unexpectedly. I would have forgiven almost anything if you had just loved me honestly. Lucas's face tightened. I do love you. The words sounded real. That was the tragedy. He probably believed them. In his own selfish way, Lucas did love her, but not enough to protect her, not enough to choose her, not enough to stop hurting her. And eventually, love that keeps destroying you stops mattering? Mae wiped her tears calmly. I can't survive another decade of this. Lucas grabbed her hand suddenly. Don't leave. There it was. Fear. Real fear this time. Not fear of losing the marriage. Fear of losing what the marriage provided him: stability, emotional labor, admiration, home comfort. Mae gently pulled her hand away. You should have been afraid of losing me before I learned how to live without you. Lucas stared at her like she'd slapped him. Good. Some truths deserved impact. An hour later, Mae carried her suitcase downstairs while Lucas followed helplessly behind her. This is insane, he muttered. Mae almost smiled. Funny how women reclaiming dignity always looked irrational to people benefiting from their suffering. As she reached the foyer, Evelyn Harper suddenly stormed through the front door. Of course Lucas called her. He still needed his mother to help manage difficult women. Evelyn looked furious. What have you done? Mae set her suitcase down calmly. Protected myself. Evelyn laughed sharply. You humiliated this family tonight. Mae stared at her. No, I exposed it. Lucas stepped between them quickly. Mom, please. No, Evelyn snapped. She needs to hear this. Mae folded her arms quietly. Evelyn's voice sharpened. You threw away 12 years over flirtation and hurt feelings. There it was. Women like Evelyn minimized betrayal because accountability threatened the systems protecting them. Mae tilted her head slightly. 12 years, she asked softly. Interesting. Because for 12 years you treated me like I was temporary. Evelyn scoffed. You were never strong enough for this family. Mae smiled sadly. No, I was too kind for it. The silence afterward felt enormous. Even Evelyn looked briefly shaken, because deep down, she knew it was true. Lucas rubbed his forehead aggressively. Can we stop attacking each other for one night? Mae looked at him calmly. Lucas, your mother insulted me publicly for years while you watched. Evelyn crossed her arms defensively. Oh, please. You're too fragile. Mae's expression finally hardened fully. No, she said quietly. You just needed me fragile so you could feel powerful. Evelyn's face went pale, for the first time ever. Mae had stopped fearing her, and bullies sensed that immediately. Mae picked up her suitcase again. Lucas moved in front of the door desperately. Where are you even going? Mae met his eyes. Home. He looked confused. This is your home? Mae glanced slowly around the mansion. Expensive art, designer furniture, cold perfection. Then back at him. No, she said softly. This was my assignment. The sentence hit Lucas visibly, because suddenly he understood Mae no longer viewed their marriage as love. She viewed it as labor, and that realization was destroying him. Outside snow fell heavily across the driveway while Mae loaded her suitcase into her car. Lucas followed her out into the cold. Please, he said quietly this time. Don't do this. Mae paused beside the driver's door. For one brief, dangerous second, she almost softened. 12 years didn't disappear overnight, but then she remembered Vanessa's bracelet, Evelyn's laughter, Lucas calling her convenient crying, alone in bathrooms apologizing for existing. No more. Mae looked at Lucas one final time. You spent years teaching me I could survive emotional neglect, she whispered. Unfortunately for you. Her eyes filled with tears again. I learned. Then she got into the car and drove away while Lucas stood frozen in the snow watching the only woman who had ever truly loved him disappear into the night. The first morning Mae woke up alone in her new apartment, she cried. Not because she missed Lucas, because silence finally felt safe. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors of the luxury high-rise Marcus had helped her lease temporarily while the divorce process unfolded. The apartment overlooked Lake Michigan, all silver water and cold winter sky stretching endlessly beyond the windows. No tension, no criticism, no walking on emotional glass. Just stillness. Mae stood barefoot in the kitchen holding coffee with trembling hands while realizing something almost unbearable. Peace felt unfamiliar after years inside emotional chaos. Her phone buzzed continuously across the marble counter. Lucas, again, and again, and again. 32 missed calls since midnight. Mae stared at the screen without answering. A month ago, ignoring Lucas would have filled her with guilt. Now it filled her with exhaustion. Because suddenly he wanted urgency, communication, emotional accountability, things she begged from him for years. Too late. Her phone buzzed again. This time a voicemail notification appeared. Mae hesitated before pressing play. Mae? Lucas's voice sounded rough, strained. Please call me back. My mother's losing her mind, the company's asking questions, and Vanessa. He stopped abruptly. Interesting. Mae replayed the voicemail slowly. Not, I miss you. Not, I hurt you. The first things out of his mouth were problems. Damage control, image management, same Lucas, different crisis. Mae deleted the voicemail calmly. Later that afternoon, Rachel Monroe arrived carrying legal files and coffee. She surveyed the apartment approvingly. "You look lighter." Mae gave a tired smile. "I also slept through the night for the first time in years." Rachel nodded knowingly. Toxic relationships exhaust the nervous system more than people realize. Mae sat at the dining table while Rachel spread documents carefully across polished wood. The divorce filing triggered immediate financial responses, Rachel explained. Lucas's attorneys are already trying to protect assets. Mae laughed softly. "Of course they are." Rachel studied her carefully. "How are you holding up emotionally?" Mae considered the question honestly. "Some moments I feel powerful." She looked down at her coffee. "Other moments I feel stupid for staying so long." Rachel's expression softened slightly. "That's grief talking." Mae shook her head. "No, it's humiliation." She swallowed hard. "I built my entire identity around being needed." The admission hurt. Rachel leaned back calmly. "Women are conditioned to mistake self-sacrifice for love very early." Mae stared quietly at the skyline outside. "I really thought if I loved him enough, he'd eventually choose me completely." Rachel's voice stayed gentle. "And what do you think now?" Mae smiled sadly. "I think people reveal themselves through patterns, not promises." The sentence lingered heavily between them. That evening, Lucas showed up unannounced outside Mae's building. Of course he did. The doorman called upstairs first. "There's a Mr. Snyder here asking to see you." Mae closed her eyes briefly. "No." The doorman hesitated. "He seems upset." Mae almost laughed. Now he was upset. Interesting timing. 5 minutes later, her phone exploded with texts. "Please just talk to me." "Mae, this is insane. You're punishing everyone. Mom hasn't stopped crying. Please." That last one almost got her. Almost. Then Mae remembered she cried alone for years while he slept peacefully beside her. No one rushed to comfort her then. She silenced the phone again. Meanwhile, Lucas Snyder's perfect life was beginning to collapse publicly. Whispers spread quickly through Chicago's corporate circles after the promotion party scandal. Executives loved polished success stories. They loved public implosions even more, especially ones involving affairs, hidden assets, and emotional scandals. 3 days later, Marcus invited Mae to lunch downtown. When she arrived, he was already seated beside the window reviewing market reports. He looked up carefully as she sat down. "You look tired." Mae smiled faintly. "I think healing is exhausting." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yes, because you're grieving both reality and illusion." That sentence hit painfully hard. Mae looked down at her menu. "I miss the version of him I thought existed." Marcus folded his hands calmly. "That's normal." Mae laughed softly. "No. What's embarrassing is part of me still wanting him to suddenly become better." Marcus's expression stayed steady. Love doesn't disappear immediately just because respect finally does. The truth of that nearly brought tears to her eyes. Marcus changed subjects gently. "The building transition is complete. Your management team finalized tenant reviews." Mae straightened slightly. Professional conversations grounded her lately. "What about Evelyn?" Marcus slid a folder toward her. "Several violations confirmed." Mae opened the file slowly. Unauthorized remodeling. Repeated complaints toward staff. Late documentation. Typical Evelyn. Marcus watched her carefully. "You can remove her legally." Mae stared silently at the paperwork. Months ago, revenge would have thrilled her. Now it just felt empty. "I don't want cruelty," Mae said quietly. Marcus nodded once. "Good." Mae frowned slightly. "That surprises you." "No," Marcus replied. "But pain makes people dangerous in 2 ways." He leaned back slowly. "Some become destructive. Others become disciplined." Mae absorbed the words quietly. Disciplined. That sounded better than bitter. Later that week, Evelyn Harper appeared unexpectedly outside Mae's office building downtown. Mae froze when she saw her waiting near the entrance in an expensive wool coat. For the first time in 12 years, Evelyn looked old. Not glamorous, not commanding, just tired. Mae approached cautiously. "What are you doing here?" Evelyn lifted her chin automatically, but the confidence looked forced now. We need to talk. Mae almost said no, but curiosity won. Inside a nearby cafe, silence stretched awkwardly between them, while coffee cooled untouched on the table. Finally, Evelyn spoke. You've destroyed Lucas. Mae blinked slowly. Interesting. Still starting with Lucas. He destroyed himself, Mae replied calmly. Evelyn's jaw tightened. He's barely functioning. Mae looked out the window quietly. For years she dreamed of Lucas finally suffering the way she did. Now that it was happening, it mostly just made her sad. Evelyn's voice lowered unexpectedly. He loved you. Mae laughed softly without humor. No. He loved what I did for him. The older woman looked away briefly, and for the first time ever, Evelyn didn't immediately argue. That unsettled Mae more than cruelty would have. After several moments, Evelyn reached into her purse and removed a folded handwritten letter. Her fingers trembled slightly. I wrote this, she said stiffly. I couldn't say it properly. Mae stared at the envelope uncertainly. Evelyn pushed it across the table awkwardly. I know I was hard on you. Hard. Such a small word for years of emotional erosion. Mae picked up the letter slowly but didn't open it yet. Evelyn's eyes looked strangely glassy now. You made Lucas dependent on being cared for, she said quietly. And I think maybe I hated you for succeeding where I failed. Mae froze. The honesty shocked her. Evelyn swallowed visibly. His father never chose me emotionally either. Silence. Heavy silence. Suddenly Mae saw it. The bitterness, the control, the cruelty. Not born from power, from abandonment. Hurt people really did hurt people, but understanding pain didn't erase damage. Mae looked at Evelyn carefully. You could have healed instead of becoming cruel. The older woman's eyes filled instantly, and for the first time in 12 years, Evelyn Harper had no defense. That night, Mae finally opened the handwritten letter alone in her apartment. The apology inside was imperfect, defensive in places, raw in others. But one sentence made Mae stop breathing briefly. I punished you for being the kind of woman I never knew how to become. Tears filled Mae's eyes slowly. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just sadness. Then suddenly her phone buzzed again. Lucas. This time it wasn't a text, it was a photo message. Lucas sitting alone inside their massive dining room. Empty chair across from him, the caption beneath it read, I finally understand how lonely you were here. Mae stared at the image silently while snow fell outside her apartment windows. And somewhere deep inside her chest, something finally began breaking loose. Not love, the need to be chosen by people incapable of loving her correctly. Lucas Snyder looked older when Mae saw him again. Not physically, emotionally. The sharp confidence he carried for years had been replaced by something hollowed out and restless, like a man suddenly forced to live without the admiration that once protected him from himself. Mae spotted him through the glass walls of her downtown office lobby one snowy Thursday afternoon. He stood near reception wearing a dark overcoat, hands shoved into his pockets, eyes tired in a way she had never seen before. For a brief, dangerous second, her heart hurt. Not because she wanted him back, because she remembered loving him before he became this version of himself. The receptionist approached carefully. He says it's important. Mae closed the property file in front of her slowly. Every instinct told her not to do this. But another quieter part of her whispered, you need closure more than avoidance. Send him up. 5 minutes later, Lucas entered her office carefully like someone stepping into sacred territory they no longer deserved access to. And maybe he was. Mae's office reflected the woman she had become: warm lighting, modern design, architectural sketches, contracts ownership, her space, her mind, her life. Lucas noticed it too. You built all this fast, he said quietly. Mae remained standing beside the windows overlooking Chicago. No, she replied calmly. I rebuilt myself slowly. You just weren't paying attention. The truth landed visibly. Lucas nodded once, unable to argue. For several moments, silence stretched between them awkwardly. Then Lucas finally spoke. I ended things with Vanessa. Mae felt almost nothing hearing it, and somehow that realization shocked her more than the affair itself once had. Lucas noticed her expression immediately. You don't care. Mae met his eyes honestly. I cared when it could still hurt me. Lucas looked down briefly. That hurt him. Good. Not because Mae wanted revenge anymore, because consequences mattered. Lucas stepped further into the office slowly. I know I failed you. Mae crossed her arms lightly. You did more than fail me. His face tightened instantly. I know. No, Mae replied softly. I don't think you do. Lucas swallowed hard. Mae walked toward her desk calmly. For years I begged you for tiny things. Her voice stayed steady. Respect, protection, honesty. Lucas stared silently, and every single time she continued, you made me feel difficult for needing them. The shame on his face looked real now. Not performative, real. Lucas rubbed a hand over his jaw slowly. I didn't realize how bad it became. Mae laughed softly. That sentence. That exact sentence. Women heard it every day from people who benefited directly from their suffering. I was crying alone in bathrooms during family dinners, Lucas. His eyes closed briefly. You watched your mother humiliate me for years. I know. You let another woman publicly disrespect me. Lucas looked physically sick now. I know. Mae's voice finally cracked slightly. And the worst part? Tears filled her eyes despite herself. I loved you enough to stay anyway. That sentence destroyed whatever composure Lucas had left. He sat down heavily in the chair across from her desk and covered his mouth briefly. Mae had never seen him look small before. Now he looked devastated. I thought, he began hoarsely, then stopped. Mae waited quietly. Lucas stared at the floor. I thought you'd always be there. There it was, the ugliest truth of all. Not hatred, not malice. Entitlement. Lucas loved her permanence more than he valued her humanity. Mae sat down slowly across from him. You stopped seeing me as someone you could lose. Lucas looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. I see it now. Mae believed him. That was the tragedy. He finally understood everything after it was already broken beyond repair. Lucas leaned forward slightly. I was selfish, yes. I liked being needed. Yes. I let my mother poison things because confronting her was uncomfortable. Mae nodded once. Yes. Lucas looked shattered by how easily she answered now. No defending him anymore. No softening reality to protect his ego. Just truth. I loved you, he whispered. Mae's eyes filled again. I know. Lucas looked confused by her response. Mae smiled sadly. That's what makes this so tragic, because love without emotional courage eventually became destruction. Lucas wiped at his eyes, roughly embarrassed by his own emotion. I hate who I became. Mae looked at him carefully. No, she said softly. You hate finally seeing yourself clearly. The silence after that felt unbearably honest. Snow drifted outside the office windows while the city moved beneath them in cold gray motion. Finally, Lucas spoke again. Do you remember Boston? Mae's chest tightened instantly. Of course she remembered. The tiny apartment, the cheap wine, the dreams, the version of Lucas who used to look at her like she mattered more than appearances. I miss him too, Mae admitted quietly. Lucas looked up sharply, then maybe no. The word came gently, but firmly. Lucas's face fell immediately. Mae leaned back slowly. You're confusing regret with transformation. That's not fair. No, Mae replied calmly. What wasn't fair was spending 12 years shrinking myself so you could feel successful. Lucas looked down again. Mae's voice softened slightly. I don't hate you. That seemed to hurt him more than anger would have, because hatred still carried emotional attachment. Peace did not. Lucas laughed weakly through tears. My mother says you've become cold. Mae almost smiled. Your mother mistakes boundaries for cruelty. He nodded slowly. She apologized to me. Mae blinked. What? Lucas swallowed. She admitted she projected a lot onto you. Mae looked away briefly toward the skyline. Interesting. Too late. But interesting. Lucas stared at her carefully. She was jealous of you. Mae laughed softly in disbelief. Jealous of what you love people without making them earn it. That sentence hit harder than expected. For years, Mae believed her softness made her weak. Now she finally understood something different. Her kindness had been valuable. They were simply too emotionally damaged to handle it responsibly. Lucas stood slowly. I know I don't deserve another chance. Mae stayed silent. But if there's even a small part of you that still... He stopped himself. Mae looked at him for a long moment, then finally spoke the truth she had carried for weeks. You only love me properly after I stopped loving you the same way. Lucas's face crumpled, because he knew it was true. People like Lucas often mistook unconditional access for permanent love. They only recognized value once absence forced them to feel it. Mae stood and walked him toward the office door slowly. At the doorway, Lucas paused. I really am sorry. Mae believed that too, and somehow believing him hurt more than manipulation ever did. Because if he had simply been evil, he would have been easier to stop loving completely. Mae opened the door gently. I forgive you, Lucas. Hope flashed briefly across his face. Then she continued, but forgiveness and access are not the same thing anymore. The hope disappeared instantly, and for the first time since their marriage began, Lucas finally understood what consequences actually felt like. Mae watched him walk down the hallway alone until the elevator doors closed behind him. Then she stood quietly inside the silence of her office. Not triumphant, not devastated, just free. The divorce became official on a rainy Tuesday morning in April. No dramatic courtroom breakdowns, no screaming, no cinematic final fight, just signatures. 12 years reduced to paperwork and quiet grief. Mae sat beside Rachel Monroe inside the private conference room while rain slid softly down the windows overlooking downtown Chicago. Across the table, Lucas looked exhausted in a dark navy suit that suddenly seemed too large on him. The judge finalized everything within 40 minutes, and somehow, that felt cruelest of all, because endings people survive for years rarely arrive with explosions. Usually they arrive quietly, like a door closing softly behind a version of yourself you'll never become again. Lucas signed the final page slowly. His hand trembled slightly. Mae noticed. Part of her would probably always notice him. That was the complicated thing about deep love. It didn't vanish immediately just because staying became impossible. When the meeting ended, Rachel gathered documents efficiently, while Lucas remained seated staring blankly at the table. Finally, he looked up. So that's it? Mae's chest tightened unexpectedly. Not because she doubted herself, because grief still existed even inside certainty. Yes, she answered gently. Lucas swallowed hard. For several seconds he looked like he wanted to say something else. Beg, argue, fight for her. But maybe he finally understood. Love that only appears after loss is still too late. Mae stood calmly. I hope you heal, Lucas. The sincerity in her voice nearly destroyed him, because after everything, she still wished him peace. Lucas laughed weakly through visible heartbreak. You're still kinder than I deserve. Mae didn't answer, because kindness had nearly ruined her once. Outside the courthouse, cold rain misted across the city streets, while reporters rushed past other scandals nearby. Nobody noticed Mae Snyder stepping into freedom. And honestly, she preferred it that way. A few months later, Mae's life barely resembled the one she left behind. Her real estate investments expanded quickly under Marcus Bennett's mentorship. The Lakeshore Drive property performed well financially, but more importantly, Mae discovered she loved building things, not homes, opportunities. She renovated neglected properties with thoughtful elegance instead of greedy luxury. She hired women restarting their lives after divorce, emotional abuse, and financial dependency. Women who looked tired in the same way she once did. One afternoon, Mae stood inside a newly renovated apartment unit speaking with a woman named Elena, a mother of two rebuilding after leaving a controlling marriage. I don't know how to start over at 43, Elena admitted quietly. Mae smiled softly. You start by realizing survival already proved you're stronger than fear. The woman's eyes filled instantly. Moments like that healed something inside Mae more than revenge ever could. Meanwhile, Lucas Snyder's life continued unraveling quietly. His promotion remained technically intact, but the scandal damaged his reputation permanently inside executive circles. Vanessa transferred offices within months after public gossip intensified. According to mutual acquaintances, the relationship ended badly. Mae felt nothing hearing that. No satisfaction, no jealousy, just distance. And that terrified her at first, because she had spent so many years defining herself through emotional attachment that emotional neutrality felt unnatural. Marcus noticed the shift before she did. You stopped looking over your shoulder, he observed one evening during dinner beside the river. Mae smiled faintly. I think I finally stopped waiting to be chosen. Marcus studied her carefully. That's usually the moment people become emotionally free. Mae looked out toward the Chicago skyline glowing gold against the dark water. For years she thought freedom would feel exciting. Instead, it felt peaceful, like finally setting down something heavy you forgot you were carrying. A week later, Evelyn Harper requested a meeting. Mae hesitated before agreeing. They met inside a quiet tea room downtown. Evelyn looked dramatically different now. Softer clothes, less makeup, less performance. Loss had humbled her in ways wealth never could. I moved into the smaller unit, Evelyn said awkwardly, while stirring tea she barely drank. Mae nodded. I know. Under anyone else, Evelyn likely would have fought eviction aggressively. But Mae handled everything professionally and fairly. Boundaries without cruelty, something Evelyn still struggled to understand. After several moments, Evelyn finally looked up. I owe you another apology. Mae stayed quiet. Evelyn exhaled shakily. I spent years punishing you for qualities I secretly admired. Mae blinked slowly. Evelyn's eyes glistened now. You loved people naturally. She looked down at her hands. I only knew how to control them. The honesty hurt more than insults ever had, because wounded people often became cruel simply to survive their own emptiness. Mae softened slightly. You didn't have to keep choosing cruelty. Evelyn nodded weakly. I know. Silence settled gently between them. Not reconciliation, but understanding. And sometimes understanding was enough. A few days later, Lucas appeared outside Mae's office again. This time he looked calmer. Sad, but calmer. Mae stepped outside to meet him beneath soft spring sunlight. I won't take much of your time, he said quietly. Mae folded her arms lightly. Okay. Lucas looked at her carefully, and for the first time since their marriage ended, he smiled without trying to manipulate her emotionally. You look happy. Mae paused. Because he was right. Not euphoric, not perfect, but genuinely peaceful. I think I finally like myself again, she admitted softly. Lucas looked away briefly. I wish I'd understood what I had before I destroyed it. Mae's chest tightened with old sadness. Then Lucas asked the question she already knew was coming. If things had been different? He hesitated. Would we have made it? Mae thought about it honestly. The younger version of herself would have answered emotionally. This version answered truthfully. Yes, she said softly, but you would have had to love me before I stopped begging for it. Lucas closed his eyes briefly. The pain on his face looked unbearable, but some griefs deserved to be carried. Mae stepped slightly closer. You losing me wasn't your punishment, Lucas? He looked confused. Mae's voice remained gentle. The real punishment is realizing too late that I would have loved you through almost anything. Tears filled his eyes instantly, because he knew it was true, and because deep down, that kind of love was nearly impossible to replace. Mae gave him a small sad smile, then she stepped back. Not because she hated him, because she finally loved herself enough not to return to what broke her. And for the first time in her life, Mae Snyder chose herself completely. 1 year later, Mae Snyder stood on the rooftop terrace of her newest property, watching the Chicago skyline glow beneath the evening sky. Wind swept softly through her hair while music drifted upward from the grand opening event happening downstairs. Laughter, conversation, life. But this building was different from the others she owned. This one mattered personally. The Harper House Transitional Living Project. Mae almost smiled at the irony of the name, not because it honored Evelyn, because it honored survival. The renovated property provided affordable temporary housing for women rebuilding after emotional abuse, divorce, financial control, and abandonment. Women who once believed they were trapped. Women who apologized too much, shrank too often, loved people who only valued their sacrifice. Women exactly like the person Mae used to be. Behind her heels clicked softly across the rooftop patio. Marcus Bennett approached carrying 2 champagne glasses. You disappeared from your own event? Mae accepted a glass with a small smile. I needed air. Marcus leaned beside her, overlooking the city. The last year had changed their relationship naturally. No dramatic romance, no desperate dependency, just trust. The kind built slowly between 2 people who respected each other's minds first. You should be proud of yourself, Marcus said quietly. Mae looked down toward the building entrance where several women and children laughed beneath warm golden lights. A few residents waved when they noticed her above. Mae waved back instinctively. I spent years thinking success looked like being chosen, she admitted softly. Marcus glanced at her, and now Mae smiled faintly. Now, I think success looks like finally choosing yourself. The words settled peacefully between them. Below them, the city moved endlessly headlights trains, office towers, millions of private heartbreaks hidden behind beautiful windows. Chicago no longer felt cold to Mae. It felt alive. Her phone buzzed softly inside her coat pocket. A message from Lucas. Mae hesitated before opening it. I heard about the housing project. You built something beautiful. I'm proud of you. No manipulation, no guilt, just honesty. Mae stared at the message quietly, then locked her phone again without replying. Not out of cruelty, because some relationships ended best in silence. Marcus noticed her expression carefully. Lucas Mae nodded slightly. You still love him a little? Marcus observed gently. Mae considered it honestly. I think I'll always love the part of him that existed before fear and ego took over. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. That's different than wanting him back. Yes, Mae said softly. Very different. For years, Mae believed healing meant erasing all emotion. Now she understood something kinder. Healing meant remembering without drowning. A few weeks later, Mae visited Lakeshore Drive for the first time in months. The building looked beautiful beneath the autumn sunlight. Cleaner, warmer, more peaceful somehow. As she entered the lobby, the front desk attendant smiled immediately. Ms. Snyder. Mae returned the smile warmly. Then the elevator doors opened behind her. Evelyn Harper stepped out slowly, carrying grocery bags. For a brief moment, both women froze. The old version of their relationship still lingered faintly in the air, like smoke after a fire. But something fundamental had changed. Evelyn looked smaller now. Not weak. Human. I didn't know you were coming by today, Evelyn said awkwardly. Mae nodded lightly. Just checking on renovations upstairs. Silence stretched briefly. Then unexpectedly, Evelyn held out one of the grocery bags. I made too much soup. Mae blinked in surprise. Not because of the soup, because 12 years ago, Evelyn would rather die than offer warmth without conditions attached. Mae accepted the bag carefully. Thank you. Evelyn nodded stiffly, then quietly added, You really did save yourself. Mae felt emotion tighten unexpectedly in her chest. Not victory. Closure. Yeah, she whispered softly. I finally did. Evelyn looked down for a moment before speaking again. You know. She hesitated awkwardly. Lucas still keeps your photo in his office. Mae closed her eyes briefly. Some grief never disappeared completely, but it no longer controlled her. That's his choice, she replied gently. Evelyn nodded. Then for the first time ever, she looked at Mae with genuine respect. No jealousy, no competition, no cruelty, just respect. Mae left the building moments later feeling strangely peaceful. Outside, autumn leaves drifted across the sidewalk while cold wind moved through the city. And suddenly she realized something important. Revenge had never truly healed her. Understanding did. Understanding that kindness was never weakness, sacrifice without reciprocity becomes self-destruction, and women who constantly abandon themselves for love eventually disappear inside it. That realization saved her life. Months later, during an interview for a local business magazine, a young reporter asked Mae the question everyone always wanted answered. What was the moment everything changed for you? Mae smiled thoughtfully. Not the gala, not the divorce, not the ownership papers. No one specific moment, she answered honestly. I think I just got tired of confusing endurance with love. The reporter nodded quickly while taking notes. And what would you tell women trapped in relationships where they feel unseen? Mae looked directly toward the camera, then answered softly, someone loving your silence more than your truth is not love. The interview spread online quickly afterward. Thousands of women commented beneath it, sharing stories, marriages, manipulation, emotional neglect, survival. Mae read many of them late one evening from her balcony, overlooking the city skyline. Some stories broke her heart. Others inspired her. All of them reminded her why her pain mattered now, because survival became meaningful when it helped someone else survive too. The wind moved gently around her while city lights shimmered endlessly below, and for the first time in her adult life, Mae Snyder felt completely at home inside herself. Not because someone finally chose her, but because she finally stopped shrinking to fit inside places that never deserved her. For years, Mae believed love meant sacrifice. She believed being patient, understanding, forgiving, and endlessly accommodating would eventually make someone value her deeply. But the hardest lesson she learned was this love that only survives when you abandon yourself is not healthy love. A kind woman is not a weak woman. And sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is stop begging for basic respect from people committed to misunderstanding them. Mae's story was never really about revenge. It was about awakening. About realizing that self-worth cannot depend on someone else finally deciding to treat you properly, because people who truly love you do not repeatedly destroy your confidence and call it normal. Healing began the moment Mae stopped asking, "How do I make them love me better?" and started asking, "Why am I accepting less than I deserve?" Some relationships end, not because love disappears, but because dignity finally arrives. And maybe that's the real message: you can forgive people without giving them access to hurt you again. You can outgrow pain without becoming cruel, and you can rebuild an entire life after believing you were too broken, too dependent, or too far gone to start over. If this story touched you, let me know in the comments. What was the moment Mae truly became powerful to you? And if you've ever had to rebuild yourself after being emotionally overlooked, betrayed, or underestimated, know this: your kindness was never the problem. Sometimes the people around you simply lacked the capacity to value it. Subscribe for more emotional stories about healing, self-worth, betrayal, and women finding their strength again.